If you stop for a moment, really stop and pay attention, you'll realize you're not merely living in the world. You're living inside a world your imagination created. Everything you see around you was once invisible. A thought, a mental picture, a whisper of possibility that someone believed in long enough to bring into reality. Look around. The phone in your hand, the microphone I'm speaking through, the car you drive, the city skyline on the horizon, even the cup you drink from. Each one began as an imagination. Long before the first wheel turned, someone imagined how to move things over land with relative ease. Before the first flint arrow was shaped, someone imagined how to cut and shape it. Before the first temple was built, an architect imagined every aspect of it. And before rockets were invented, someone imagined killing their enemies from distances beyond sight. Later, we imagined using the same technology to put people into outer space, to walk on the moon, and to reach towards other planets. That's the truth of human imagination. It builds and it destroys. It creates miracles and it designs nightmares. Everything humanity has ever done, good or evil, started in the imagination. Every invention, every revolution, every atrocity, every act of kindness, all of it began as a thought in someone's mind, their imagination. Every civilization began that way, as an idea that took root in one person's mind. The pyramids, electricity, airplanes, smartphones, artificial intelligence, all of it. Each piece of our shared reality was once a vision in someone's imagination. Even the darker aspects of it, the darker creations, the sphere, the sword, the gun, the nuclear warhead, were born in the same way, from imagination first. Every act of violence, every act of compassion, every work of art, every mechanism of war, every invention, every revolution, all trace back to the same source, the imagination. There is nothing in your reality that did not begin in imagination. Absolutely nothing. That's how sacred this power is and how dangerous it can become. Because imagination doesn't care whether it builds or destroys, it simply obeys the consciousness that wields it. The subconscious mind never asks, is this true? Is this good? It only listens to the repetition and emotion. The images, you feed it again and again. Then it goes to work, shaping your outer world to match your inner vision. Because the story you tell yourself about who you are and what is possible, your self image, is written first in your imagination. And think about that word, image. It's the root of the word imagination. Isn't that obvious? It's been hidden in plain sight all along. That's why humanity can compose a symphony one century and design a ballistic missile the next. The same instrument, the imagination, is simply played at different frequencies of awareness. Imagination is the tool of creation. It's the tool used by the divine architect, you. Hidden within the human mind is the same creative force that shapes worlds. You are the architect of your reality, the bridge between the unseen and the seen, between spirit and matter, between thought and material form. You are the divine architect of your life. Think about that. Everything you've ever built, attracted, or destroyed began in the same way, your imagination. When you think, feel, and believe something deeply enough, you give it life. You impress it upon your subconscious, and the subconscious moves the universe to match your inner picture. That's not poetry, that's power. And whether we use it to build or to destroy, to free ourselves or to enslave our thoughts to fear, depends entirely on our level of consciousness. You think you are responding to reality, but almost everything you feel, every belief you hold, every choice you make emerges not from the outer world, but from the inner story you're telling yourself about it. And for most people, that story was deliberately influenced by the puppet masters. You don't experience reality directly. You experience your interpretation of it. And your interpretation is imagination in motion. That's why two people can live through the same event, the same experience, and walk away living in two completely different worlds. The event itself is neutral. The meaning, the emotion, the memory, those come from the imagination. Imagination is not a child's toy. It's not make believe. It's the most powerful creative force in existence. And paradoxically, the most underestimated. It's what bridges what is with what can be. It's the silent engine behind art, science, spirituality, progress, and destruction. It is both your greatest gift and your greatest vulnerability. Because until you learn to use your imagination consciously and in the right way, someone else, the puppet masters, will use it for their benefit, not yours. Imagine this. You're sitting at home late at night. The lights are dim. The world outside is quiet. You glance at your phone and you notice a message. It's from your boss. Just 3 words. Can we talk? That's it. No context, no emoji, no explanation. And instantly, your imagination comes alive. Your mind starts writing a script. Did I do something wrong? Maybe they're cutting staff. What if I'm next? Your heartbeat picks up. Your stomach tightens. You're wide awake, but not because of the message itself. You're reacting to the movie your imagination is projecting on the screen of your mind. And here's the most important part: the subconscious doesn't know the difference between real danger and imagined danger. It responds to the images you project, your imagination, and it performs the story your mind is running. Remember this always. You have a mind. The mind does not have you. Your job is to direct it, not be directed by it. Train your mind, or it will train you. Sit with that thought for a moment. That's the secret most people are never taught. because they don't want you to know this. You don't live in the world as it is. You live in the world as you imagine it to be. So if you want to improve your reality, you must first improve the story you're telling yourself in your imagination. If imagination is a tool used by the architect of everything we've ever created, then there must be a master architect behind imagination itself, a hidden director, silently shaping what plays on the screen of your mind. And there is. The director is you, but not always the conscious you. Most of the time, it's the conditioned you, the version shaped by past experiences, fears, anxieties, and the puppet masters of the world. The one programmed by childhood, by the culture you grew up in, by the teachers, parents, and media that told you what was possible and what was not, what was allowed and what was not. That version of you runs the projector, while the conscious self sits in the audience, watching the movie unfold and calling it reality. Let's go back for a moment to childhood. Watch any child for even 5 minutes, and you'll see pure imagination in motion. Give a kid a stick, and it becomes a sword. Give them a blanket, and suddenly it's a castle. They don't pretend the world is magical, they experience it that way. In their mind, dragons exist, and every adventure feels real. That is the purest, most divine expression of human creativity, unfiltered and uncorrupted. And if you go back to your own childhood, I'm sure you'll understand what I just said. As we grow older, something happens. That raw creative power doesn't disappear, it just gets reprogrammed. We're told to be realistic, to stop daydreaming, to prepare for the real world. And so, slowly, the imagination that once built kingdoms and galaxies starts building worries, fears, and anxieties instead. In some people, the same imagination builds depression, entire inner worlds of defeat that never actually existed. And in others, it builds determination, goals, and success. The same tool, the same power, used in two completely different ways, creates two completely different realities in the same world. That's the nature of imagination. It doesn't choose sides. It simply builds whatever you feed it. Feed it fear, and it will build anxiety. Feed it determination, and it will build confidence. For a great many people, instead of imagining possibility, they imagine everything that can go wrong. They imagine failure, rejection, embarrassment, loss. They picture worst case scenarios so vividly that they react as if those things have already happened, flooded with stress hormones, and their actions or inactions follow that negative story they invented in their own imaginations. That's when imagination stops serving you and starts serving your conditioning. It becomes hijacked, sometimes by the evil of the puppet masters, and always by habit, because you have not been properly taught. You've been conditioned. You see, most people think of imagination as creative thinking, but it is much more than that. It is an energy translator, the bridge between thought and emotion. Whatever you feed it, positive or negative, it projects outward into your experience. When you worry, your imagination is working. When you plan for disaster, your imagination is working. When you replay arguments in your head, that's imagination rehearsing pain. It's not that you lack imagination, it's that you're using it unconsciously and often against yourself. You are simply not using it in the right way. The hidden director, that unconscious part of you, takes notes from everything around you, from conversations, movies, news, headlines, social media feeds. Every image, every emotional experience becomes a new material for its script. And unless you take back creative control, active control, that director keeps looping the same scenes over and over: fear, worry, resentment, doubt, lack of confidence. And that is how stress is born, not from the world, but from the stories your imagination tells you about the world and about yourself. Let's say you walk into work and your coworker doesn't say hello to you. Immediately, your imagination starts writing. Maybe she's mad at me. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe she's talking behind my back. And suddenly your mood changes. Your chest tightens. You start replaying yesterday's conversations, scanning for clues, all because the hidden director decided to turn silence into a story. That's how powerful this mechanism is. You don't react to reality, you react to your imagination's version of reality. Now imagine taking control of that director's chair. Imagine consciously deciding what kind of movie your mind is going to play. That's what mental sovereignty really means. Not controlling the world, but controlling the lens through which you see it, your imagination. Because the truth is, the same imagination that builds fear can build faith. The same imagination that creates stress creates serenity. The same mind that imagines catastrophe can imagine solutions. Think about it. The same person who once laid awake imagining everything that can go wrong can just as easily imagine everything going right, seeing themselves confident, calm, and capable, feeling support instead of resistance, watching doors open instead of close. And when that inner movie changes, the outer world starts to reflect it. When you begin to understand that, you realize something profound. The human mind is not a victim of the world, it's the author of it. Imagination doesn't operate in isolation, it's constantly being fed by external sources: movies, music, advertising, social media, religion, politics, culture, you name it. Everywhere you turn, someone is competing for screen time in the movie theater of your mind. And here's the uncomfortable truth: the more emotional the message, the deeper it programs you. Let's start with something simple: movies. Think of the last time You cried at a film. You knew it wasn't real, and yet you reacted as if it were. That's the power of imagination, guided by imagery and sound. Now imagine the same mechanism being used not to tell stories, but to shape beliefs. A romantic comedy might subtly sell you on what real love should look like. A war movie might glorify violence and murder as heroism. A news broadcast might amplify fear to keep your attention. And an advertisement may whisper, "You'll be happy if you buy this." These are all uses of your imagination, but not by you, by the puppet masters who conditioned you. When imagination is hijacked, it stops being a tool of creation and becomes a weapon of manipulation. And the scariest part, most people don't even notice. They accept and repeat like puppets. And once enough people believe and adopt the implanted image, public opinion has been successfully shaped by the puppet masters. I know this sounds dark, but it doesn't have to be. You can stand firm within yourself, allowing any attempt at manipulation to wash past you without effect. But it starts with awareness, because if you're not aware of what is broken, you can't possibly know what needs to be fixed. Let's look at the news. A study once found that people who watch just 3 minutes of negative news in the morning were 27% more likely to report feeling unhappy by the end of the day. Not because of what happened in the world, but because of what their imagination did with it, with that information. The mind starts looping. What if this happens here? What if this happens to me? What if the economy collapses? What if people are getting worse? Before you know it, or before they know it, the imagination turns external events into internal anxiety. And that anxiety changes their perspective of everything, including themselves. You start expecting danger, failure, conflict. And because expectation directs attention, you begin to see more of it. That's the law of imagination. What you focus on expands, not because the world changed, but because you do. Energy flows where attention goes. The solution to media and political manipulation of your imagination is simple. Because politicians use the media to influence your imagination, this single technique works for both. Stop watching the news. And when political ads appear, change the channel. Just do this as an experiment and see what happens. If you do this for 2 weeks, you'll be surprised at how peaceful the world begins to seem. Do it for 3 or 4 weeks, and it might become a permanent habit. For many people, the hardest part isn't turning it off, it's breaking the addiction to the drama they didn't even realize they had. But think about it, do you really need the news? When you realize that much of it isn't information, but manipulation, doesn't it make it easier to switch it off? And if you can't control a situation, what sense is there in worrying about it? Just turn it off and move on. And if you can control it, what sense is there in worrying about it? Take action and do something about it. That's how you reclaim your imagination, by refusing to let manipulation take root and letting it flow past you without effect. Advertisers take this to another level. It doesn't just sell products, it sells possible versions of you. A perfume commercial doesn't talk about ingredients, it shows you a mysterious, powerful, magnetic you, a fantasy self. And your subconscious whispers, if I buy that, maybe I'll feel that way. But you won't. Because that version only exists in imagination. The product was never the real object of desire, it was the feeling the imagination created. That's how entire industries survive, by renting space in your mind's theater. Even religion and culture have long understood this principle. They've used imagination to shape morality, behavior, and obedience, paint vivid pictures of heaven and hell, and people will adjust their lives accordingly. Describe sin with enough emotional imagery, and guilt becomes self perpetuating. Now, that doesn't mean faith and morality are bad. Not at all. It simply means that the imagination is a delivery system of belief. Whatever enters your imagination repeatedly, especially when charged with emotion, becomes your inner truth. And that inner truth defines how you experience outer reality. Here in Japan, where I live, I've noticed something curious. Sometimes late night television broadcasts emotionally charged stories, once crafted specifically to make people cry. Heartbreaking documentaries, tearful reunions, tragedies retold with negative emotional music. They pull you in. You feel empathy, sorrow, nostalgia, and then the program ends. But that emotional state stays with you. You go to bed with sadness in your nervous system. Why? Because emotion extends the life of imagination. It's not accidental. Producers understand that the longer you stay emotionally engaged, the longer you watch. And the longer you watch, the higher the ratings and the more advertising revenue for them. That is manipulation. And manipulation, no matter how it's branded, even as business, is still a form of evil. A business is run by people. And when people choose to exploit emotion for profit, they are engaging in dishonesty and spiritual harm, whether they admit it or not. Recognizing this doesn't make you cynical, it makes you sovereign, because awareness is what breaks the spell. Imagination is neither good nor bad, it's pure power. And power takes the shape of the one who wields it. Think about it. Every invention, every painting, every scientific breakthrough, every act of courage all began in imagination. The Wright brothers imagined flight, Edison imagined light, Beethoven imagined symphonies he could no longer hear. But the same power, when turned inward unconsciously, creates fear, anxiety, despair, depression. Because what is anxiety if not imagination misused? Think about that. Fear is failure in imagination. Jealousy is imagination. Even shame is imagination. a story about how we believe others see us. We live and die in these imagined realities every single day. I remember when my wife, who teaches Pilates, once told me she felt disheartened. A few of her students had stopped coming to class. She immediately imagined the worst. Maybe they don't like my teaching. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. For days, she carried that emotional weight, not because of what was real, but because of what was imagined. Then, weeks later, she ran into one of those students. The woman smiled and said, "Oh, I'm sorry I haven't been back. Things have just been hectic with the kids and getting back to work." That one sentence shattered the illusion. Her suffering had been entirely self created, a movie her imagination wrote and believed. Now, here's the beautiful part. Once she saw that, she laughed. She realized the power of her imagination and the danger of not mastering it. That's when I told her something simple. Your imagination can make you either a prisoner or a creator. The difference depends on how you use it. Constructively, which takes conscious effort until it becomes natural, or destructively, which is what happens when it's left unconscious. When imagination is used unconsciously, it creates a loop. A negative thought sparks a feeling. That feeling reinforces the thought, and together they harden into belief. Once a belief takes hold, the mind filters reality to conform to it. That's how self fulfilling prophecies are born. You believe people don't respect you, so you walk into a room guarded. That energy subtly shifts how other people respond. They mirror your tension, and you say, "See, they really don't like me." But what really happened is that the imagination created the energy that created the evidence. Because people respond to your energy, believe it or not. It's the law of attraction in action. It's like a magnet, it works in both directions. A magnet both attracts and repels depending on its polarity. And your imagination does the same, attract or repel. It draws in experiences that match your dominant focus. Now imagine the opposite. You believe people appreciate you. You walk into the room open, relaxed, confident. That energy invites connection. People smile, engage with you, and respond with warmth. And you say to yourself, "You see, people really are kind." In truth, it was your imagination again. But this time, it worked for you instead of against you. So, how do you take back control? How do you stop being an actor in someone else's movie and become the conscious director of your own movie? It begins with awareness. You have to catch yourself in the act of imagining. It's usually in the form of mind chatter for many people. The next time you feel stressed, pause and say to yourself, "What am I thinking? What am I imagining right now?" You'll be surprised. You might discover that your stress isn't about what's happening, it's about what you think might happen. It may even have been triggered by a scene you watched on TV or by music you're listening to, consciously or unconsciously in the background. Music is incredibly powerful at triggering the imagination, especially dramatic music. Now, once you see that, you're free to rewrite it. That's step one, awareness. Step two, conscious redirection. Replace fearful images with creative imagination. Instead of picturing the worst case scenario, visualize the best possible outcome. See yourself calm, capable, and in control. Feel the peace of everything unfolding smoothly. Because the mind doesn't distinguish whether that image is real or not. It just obeys the signal you send it. The script backed by emotion. Step three, input control. Guard the gates of your imagination. Be selective about what you watch, read, and listen to. If you feed your mind fear all day, don't be surprised when it projects fear at night. Step four, gratitude. Gratitude is imagination's natural antidote to anxiety. Think of something you're grateful for. Anything, it doesn't matter. A loving spouse or partner, your kids, your dog. Maybe you're grateful for the opportunity to earn a living doing something that you love. And if you don't have any of those things right now, you can still be grateful for something as simple as listening to this podcast because it is contributing to a better you and a better life. Step five is action. Because imagination without action is just fantasy, wishful thinking without direction. Every vision must be grounded in movement, not grand leaps, but small, consistent steps that give form to what once existed only in your mind. That's how dreams become reality. Through imagination and the will to act, dreams are transformed into intentions. And intentions, when acted upon, reshape the world around you. Why is that important? Because dreams don't come true, intentions do. A dream says, I wish. Intentions say, I will. A dream waits for the perfect moment. An intention creates it. When you take action, even the smallest action, you send a signal to your subconscious that says, this is real. And your subconscious begins reorganizing your focus, energy, and behavior to make it so. Action turns imagination from possibility into proof. It's where inner vision meets outer creation. You have a choice between two worlds. And this is the part the puppet masters don't want you to know because your stress is profitable. Every day, you stand at a crossroad between two realities, the one you imagine unconsciously and the one you create intentionally. One is programmed by fear, repetition, and external influence. A story written for you by those who profit from your anxiety. The other is written by awareness, choice, and love. A story authored by your own higher mind. Too bad they don't teach this in school. If they did, the world will be a much different place, a much wiser, freer, and more compassionate place. But it will also be far less profitable for those who manipulate attention and emotion for economic gain. When you learn to use your imagination consciously, stress becomes optional because stress can only live inside a story, and you are the storyteller. That's mental sovereignty. That, my friends, is freedom. Everything that exists began as imagination. The building you see, the technology you hold, even the relationship you cherish, someone imagined them first. So why not do the same thing with your peace, your health, your joy? Why not imagine a life so grounded, so aligned that no one, not the media, not politics, not culture, not even religious institutions, can hijack your inner movie ever again? You can. The question is, will you? When you understand that imagination creates emotion and emotions direct energy, you begin to realize that every feeling, every outcome is simply your imagination made visible. Stress, fear, doubt, they're not enemies. They're signposts pointing towards unconscious creation. The moment you become conscious of what you're imagining, you reclaim authorship. And when you do, something extraordinary happens. You stop being a puppet and start being the puppeteer of your own mind. If this episode resonated with you, there's a deeper level waiting for you in the Patreon version, Creating Consciously. In that session, we'll go beyond understanding into reprogramming with 7 I am affirmations to anchor conscious creation and a full guided visualization using meditation where you'll feel what it's like to live the life you imagine here and now. Because once you master your imagination, the puppet masters lose all power, and stress has nowhere to live.